Just a question around, or there was just some uncertainty around HPL's responsibility for their assets. So just to make it clear, the existing assets under council are retained by council.
You mean the property assets?
The 3 properties, yes. In the event that there is, new property identified, a development project, then that new property would then come under HPL. The motivation in terms of the mechanism at the moment is somewhat motivated by the liability, the taxation liability for the existing properties. But just for point of clarification, any new property developments will sit under HPL. In the event that some of the existing properties are required for a development, then HPL would need to go through due process and get approval to be able to use those properties through council for the development that's being looked at in relation to existing buildings.
Okay, to summarise, cash assets transferred,
Yes.
property assets retained but management
Yes.
to HPL.
Yes.
Anything that HPL does with the cash and joint ventures, property investments is theirs to retain.
Yes.
If they wish to deal with a property in the property portfolio, they would have to come back to the council with their proposal and ask for the council to approve that transaction.
Yes, and the rationale for that is that the direction from council has been to look to liquidate those over time, and we know that currently we will need to start to renew those properties to retain those values, so it would make sense for us in the short order to be liquidating those anyway. So yes, that is correct.
Okay, all right. Councillor Mallett, you had a question, did you?
Yeah, so the balance sheet at the moment that we're talking about, so just run me through, what will Hamilton Properties balance sheet be on day one? Some cash? And that's all, eh?
Correct.
Okay. And a management contract, which currently Nick does, currently Nick's team looks after, so there'll be some, I don't know, change over there. Okay, so on day one there'll be some cash, and the other side will be equity, shares which are owned by Hamilton City Council.
Correct.
And on day two, the HPL can go and buy a property or do a development, and then the cash will change into, oh shit, excuse me. Hot coffee, my apologies. Oh, shivers, I said. I thought I was going to spill the whole thing on our new system.
You would be sent from the room, Councillor Mallett, sent from the room.
I've sent the first message and I've sent the first mess. Okay, so then on day two, we could possibly, the cash could reduce and a new property asset, be it a bit of bare land or an existing... okay.
Correct, absolutely.
So, okay.
Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, so just one quick question. If one of the remaining 3 properties still with council is required to be transferred to HBL in order to facilitate a joint venture or whatever, that would require a decision of council to transfer that.
Correct, and then once it either is transferred or the funds from that would then go to HPL, and any new development after that would then be in HPL's books.
Right, so I think that's clarified. Those of us on the B&I subcommittee were thinking that we might have been hearing something different, so thank you for explaining that to us.
Sorry, just one more. What's the amount of cash? 50,000, is it?
28 million.
28 million currently.
A million, beg your pardon, I meant 50 million.
Yeah,
so where have I had the 48 million? Where did that figure come from?
The total asset portfolio.
Oh, that's inclusive of buildings. Okay, existing buildings. Okay. So it's, just say the figure of the cash again? That's a big... I mean, no, I guess the management, the $800,000 is a big chunk of that. That's a... Anyway.
All right, any other questions? Okay, sorry, yes?
We're not allowed to propose that this money goes to debt reduction, and we're not allowed to legislate ourselves out of this policy because of where it came from in the first place.
Oh, right. Well, there's a piece of legislation that governs these properties, but the policy sets what the council does with it or how it manages the fund. So that's why we have a policy, to do that. So that policy can be what councillors would like it to be.
So we could change that policy to pay down debt with the money, and that would be the end of the whole endowment fund.
Can I respond to that, Your Worship?
Probably not.
Sorry, no,
No, yeah,
no, it wouldn't be the end of it. No.
Yeah, so no, we can't. So we've had legal advice on that because that's one of our options when we noticed for the BNI committee.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns they have is erosion of capital and real returns. And the concern is that if over time we don't actively manage it, we're not actually seen as maintaining the capital. It's probably been okay for this period of time, but if it was a deliberate decision, we'd probably have to go to central government and get the legislation or that specific endowment property released back to general funds. At the moment, it is what it is, and we've got to effectively show that we're doing something prudent with it and trying to maintain the capital as much as possible.
That's right, because a legal proposition about endowment is to maintain the capital. Yeah, okay. A question on what we've just discussed, yes?
Following on from that, Worship, oops, just want to turn that on. No, there's too many others on.
Can we have some off, thanks? Yeah.
Thanks. If a new property is gifted to council for the same purposes as the current endowment, either the current endowment fund properties, how does that sit with either A, the Act, is it covered by the Act, and B, this particular proposal?
There would be no more endowment properties, would they? Because they're from the 1890s,
Correct,
aren't they?
yeah.
Well, what? Yeah, but I
don't think the
understand that. I'm
government's got
talking
anything
about
left to
someone
give anyone.
leaves this one in a will, which does happen with other councils from time to time. Yeah, for a reserve or whatever.
Yes, but that's not this.
No, that would be then
Yes,
under
separate.
other council-owned properties. The property team would look after it, and there may be a determination by council to put it into here, but certainly it would be just part of our other properties that the property team look after in its own basis.
Yeah.
No,
Thanks.
good.
When was the last time someone willed the council, left in their estate a property to the council?
Days Park outside Gary's house.
Yes, so that was when?
That wasn't me.
Wasn't you, Gary? Right, okay.
Taitua Arboretum.
Taitua Arboretum, yeah, good point.
In his common.
Yes, I'm just thinking how long ago though, which is quite some time ago, but yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Okay, so can we go up to the top just to recheck that the experts are comfortable with the motion wording? Right, nothing else needs to be added to that? Right. Okay, and if we go down, and councillors, of course, that does include that table that's in your booklet. That big table. All right.
If you could just go up to the top of the motion, I just wonder whether, noting that the ownership of the existing or the present property
Yes,
assets,
that's good. Yeah,
given that
good
we would
point.
expect Hamilton
Yep, the
Properties to
existing.
add their
Yep.
own
Well, the
perhaps real estate to it.
Current, I think current.
Current's the
Current.
word, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, that's good. Okay. Okay, and if we go down to the amendment. Okay, so is there a seconder for Councillor McPherson's amendment? Councillor Mallett, you're seconding that? Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go to debate now, but we'll debate the motion and the amendment. So if you can state when you're speaking which one you're supporting and then do your bit, that would be good. All right, so I'm the mover of the motion and I'm going to speak first. This has actually been a very long journey, and one could say the journey started when HPL stopped operating back in the late 1990s. But it has been a couple of years in the making to get here. Councillors have had quite a few discussions on this, and those in the BNI subcommittee certainly have delved a lot more into the detail. But I do want to thank Councillor Gallagher for coming to the BNI subcommittee and participating in that, because it was a matter he was very interested in, and I found that very useful, so thank you for that. For me, this is actually a no-brainer for me. I've always found it quite incredible that we have had this fund sitting passively by and not using it to maximise the opportunities for the future of the city. When we look around lots of other councils, and we did do this, and councillors will have seen the report that PwC did on looking at what other councils have done with their funds and how they have used those funds to maximise great opportunities for their cities. We have sat on the sideline. And even places like Invercargill have been very successful in some of the investments they have made to benefit their community. When you look at the history of how HBL operated, you would have seen that it did both commercial investments and it did things for the community, libraries and stuff. We would not have had the Novotel or the BNZ building if this fund had not been active. And I say that with a lot of confidence because there's always a risk element in doing those sorts of things. And sometimes when things get to this table, you know, we have a lot more caution about what we do. I don't think there would be anyone in Hamilton that would disagree that those investments were good investments when we look at that today. They were made at a time when there was something really needed in the city, and that fund was able to be used for that. I think that the time has come for us to really grasp the implementation of some of the plans we've made, but more particularly to work in partnership with investors to de-risk in some respects some of their concerns, because at the end of the day I think we all want the same thing. We actually want an outcome that benefits the city, its economic viability and activity and growth, and the community. And I think this is a great way to do this. For councillors that might be thinking, well, you know, the next council should look at this, and this is why I don't support the amendment. I have throughout my time on the council been very clear about processes, and that is we gather all the information, we analyse it, we hash it out around this table, but we make a decision. We do not procrastinate and put things aside. And I'm confident the public like that about the way this council has operated. There is a timeline in this. So this is not the end of it. There is an opportunity when it comes back in March, if that council doesn't like this, to pull the plug. But I'm actually confident that they will like this, listening to what people have been saying during the election campaign. It's got a lot of support in the consultation process, and everyone that I've talked to thinks that this kind of concept is a really good idea. So it's got some checks and balances in it that says, you know, make the decision today. There's always some opportunity a bit later if there's some uncertainty or you know, the staff say we've got to look at this or we've got to look at that. We need to get on with this. This is a good idea. It's a good idea. And I say just go for it. Okay, who else wants to speak? Councillor.
Thank you. Clearly I'm supporting the amendment. Even if you agree with the Mayor that we've have all the information and it's time to make a decision, you need to reflect, and I'd like you to put up, Becca, if you could, the actual motion up there, the yellow fever, the yellow polka dots that are all over it, and that is because significant more information came to light during the discussion as a result of questions than was there in the past. Look at point F, and is to include a risk analysis. There is no risk analysis in there at the moment. This is a proposal that affects $52 million worth of, or 48.5, depending on which part of the report you read, value and assets. And we don't have a risk analysis. We're unclear on whether it was cash assets or just ordinary assets, as the staff originally said. There are a whole lot of things that have had to be changed as a result of that. And I think the Mayor has certainly helped clarify some of them, but we've been thinking on the hoof. And I don't think this is a decision at this late stage with 10 days of this council to go, or 9 days for this council to make that decision. I don't think it hurts to delay it. I think it will help because we'll get more detailed information. Now, you know, there are so many changes up there that I don't think we can rely on the fact that we have got all the changes we need. As someone at last night's mayoral debate said, someone not in this room, you can put lipstick on a pig, but the animal's still a pig. And I have a problem with the whole direction we're going here. But even if you don't have a problem with the direction, how can you be sure that we've included everything? And that is a major problem, I think. I don't think it's going to hurt us to delay this. Let's just look at the finances. From what staff were saying before and advisors in the very confused discussion about the financial quantum, we currently seem to get $2.3 million in income from these endowment properties. The minimum requirement in the first year will be that we get $2.7 million, i.e. 5.5% of $48.5 million, which is the current value of that. So that leaves us with $400,000 better off if we do that. But those same advisors and staff have told us that it's going to be north of $600,000 cost at the lowest level, and higher than that if the activity gets greater. So from the first year, we're going to lose $200,000 potentially. Now, that is on the figures when we're given today. You can check those yourself if you like, but I added them up during that discussion, got my calculator out, and that's what they came to. I didn't make them up. More importantly, from my point of view, and the reason that I'm concerned about putting this to a CCO at this point, it's not just commercial issue. The properties that were given to the municipal and domain endowment funds were given for specific non-commercial purposes. We applied a requirement in our policy to get basically the equivalent of the going interest rates as income from that, as though we had it in the bank and got the best return we could from that. That is fine, but to try and enhance that further is something that I'm not entirely comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with the lack of governance elected members will have when there is a CCO in place. We won't be able to directly affect that, what they're doing. Contract or non-contract notwithstanding, doesn't matter. We're still not going to be able to directly affect anything there. This is a $52 million portfolio. There is no evidence being provided by staff that things weren't working before. In fact, the evidence is to the contrary. The answer from the General Manager was that our policy in the municipal and domain endowment funds policy was being followed. The objectives were being met, he said, currently without a CCO. So think about that. Staff or management said to us that the evidence they had was the opinions of people around the place. Where is the evidence that we actually will be making a great... There's a lot of hope in there, but there's no evidence we'll be making more money, more returns for the ratepayers out of that. In fact, the only evidence I've seen is that in the first year, we're going to make a $200,000 loss, it seems. The cost of the directors, the cost of staff, the extra bureaucratic layers, the red tape layers, all of those are problems. I'm not saying that we should never go down this track, but I am saying it's far too early to decide to do that, and it's unnecessary for us to decide today. It is not a question of us delaying things, it's a question of getting it right before you go down this track. And I don't think anyone could truthfully say that the report we had was right because of all the additions we've made. No matter what your point of view, we've had to make a whole lot of changes on the hoof. Is that a good way to make a decision about a $52 million portfolio? I don't think it is. I think this whole report, enhanced and corrected and updated, should go to the new council and they can determine that. I may not be there, I may be in a minority, it may be a whole lot of Gary Mallets on the council and we go automatically down this path. That's fine if we get all the facts together and do it properly. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Mallett and your stopwatch is on. Yes. Yes.
I have a foreshadowed amendment to go up before too many people speak, or else there won't be anyone to second it. So could we put that up now, please? And it ties in with where it's going. So.
Yes, it would have been helpful if you'd signalled that before we started the debate, but I think it is useful for us to see what it is. So what is it?
Staff have it. So,
Just say what it is. What is it?
The councillor's proposed amendment would be that the policy be reviewed so the fund be only used for passive investments, not developments, nor using our privileged position for future rezoning opportunities.
Okay, so they can type that all up. We've sort of heard the gist of it. So, Councillor King, when we've disposed of this process we're in at the moment and dealt with the amendment, then you can put yours up, okay?
so this would be a part of the full recommendation.
Okay.
So it will be the...
Yep. So we'll get to that when, yep, I think we
Well,
understand.
what I'm saying, it's not a standalone.
No,
it's,
I understand that.
It's an extra F or G or wherever we're up to.
All right, so you can just get that ready and then we'll deal with that separately when we get to it. All right, Councillor Mallett, the time starts now.
It's like the chaser, isn't it?
When people are speaking, there's no intent to second. People excluding themselves from seconding my foreshadowed amendments by speaking, are they not?
What's the process?
So everyone speaks and there's no one to second it.
When you've got an amendment and a motion, and now we've got a foreshadowed amendment, I thought it was to do with who can second. What's the rule? So you've got a reprieve on your time, Councillor Mallett. The clock has stopped.
Your Worship,
What number is it?
3.7.4 of the standing orders.
3.7.4.
That's not it. No, that's not it.
So that says that we can do it. Yeah.
If we look at, just as there's a helpful flowchart in Appendix F of the standing orders that says that further relevant amendments can be moved and seconded by persons who have not yet spoken. Seconded. Yes.
The rule also says that you can move it when you speak, right?
Yes.
It comes when your time for speaking is. Okay, that's what the rule says. So I think we have to keep to that. So when you are speaking, so I've got Councillor Mallett's the next speaker. So I haven't got anyone else on the. Who's the next speaker after the list? No. So you could be next, and then you can put your foreshadowed then, and we can get a seconder for it then. Okay.
So I thought that once debate had started, no further amendments could be put. Is that incorrect?
No, the way I'm reading that section is that when you speak,
Yep.
you can foreshadow an amendment, correct?
Oh.
So I'm interpreting it correctly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it's once voting, that's right, yeah. I mean, the idea is we try and give everyone a fair go, I suppose. So, all right, so after Councillor Mallett, I've got Councillor King, who's speaking in the debate and foreshadowing his amendment, and someone would need to be a seconder then, or the person that is going to second it would not be able to speak in the debate, okay? Right? Have I got that right? Correct, good. Okay, Councillor Mallett, you're back on the clock. Now.
Okay, now I understand the basics of the Municipal Endowment Fund, and that the requirement is that it must maintain its capital and hopefully generate an income in order to, quote unquote, subsidise the rates. And the government did it because they were very concerned that 100 years ago all the local authorities were going to go tits up and go bust. So that was the reason for it. And I think, and this ties in with the bit of colloquialism there, ties in with what Andrew said, is that the most appropriate method of doing this is through passive property ownership. It is not through development, for two very good reasons. First of all, we are not very good at property development, and secondly, passive property ownership is a way less, nothing's risk-free, but it's a way less risky venture than development is. And another reason that we should not be in the property development game is that we are both, if we are in the property development game, we are both a player and the regulator. And without, whether it's perceived or real, there will be a risk that we will tilt the playing field to our own advantage. So that's there's three very important reasons. A, the passive building ownership will generate the revenue and is the least risky way of, most secure way of protecting your capital. Secondly, property development, we're not good at it, and it is very risky. And thirdly, that if we become a property developer, there is a huge risk, and I think possibly it would happen, that we will cheat and we will start to regulate for our own benefit. So I actually support the foreshadowed motion. Yeah, thank you.
King, you're next.
Could I have my foreshadowed amendment put up, please?
Yeah, so you're required, you've got to participate in this debate, and you can foreshadow that that's the motion, amendment you want to put. Well, certainly it is for you, and to get a seconder for it, it is, yes.
How can I speak to it if it's not?
Well, I don't think, I think the answer here is normally what we do is we do the amendment and motion together to save time and be practical, but
so we're going to
technically speaking, you would take those individually. So I think we should deal with it collectively, but what I want you to do is get that up there, and I want to know if there's a seconder for it.
Thank you.
And it can't be Councillor Mallett because he seconded the other one.
Your Worship, could I just ask for clarification? I mean, the standing orders say that a second is not required until that foreshadowed
yes, it does say
becomes a motion. So I guess the risk is that any elected member foreshadows something while they're in debate, and then every person speaks. You've got to wait until the motion, that you know, the amendment and the motion fails, so that the foreshadow becomes. It's the only way to get a seconder is that the foreshadow becomes a motion. So he doesn't need a seconder straight away.
No, I realise that, but the other issue, which is a relevant issue, is that if you speak, you can't second it. So I guess by putting it up there, if someone is minded to make that at least votable, they won't speak yet. Yet.
I don't,
correct?
No, sorry, Your Worship, I don't think that that's correct. Democracy need to look at that. It clearly says in 3.7.4, a foreshadowed motion or amendment requires a seconder only if it becomes a motion. So if it becomes a motion, then it doesn't matter if everyone's spoken. I guess it's a new motion, isn't it? So everyone can speak again.
Yes, that's right. I guess we're trying to just be expedient, but... Okay, so we'll follow the standing orders. He's foreshadowing it. We will deal with the amendment and the motion, and if it gets to that one, then there'll be a seconder and we'll speak to it. All right? Is everyone clear what it is? Okay. All right, Councillor King, you're on. In the amendment and motion.
So it appears to me, if I understand it, that we've got these investments that we have to, due to central government legislation or legislation that we're covered by, we have to hold and we have to ensure that they are protected and that they increase in value as much as possible. But this doesn't mean that we have to risk the money. And I believe if council wants to get involved in the high-risk game of property development, then that should come back as a proposal to this table, and this table should make the decision on that. So I've got no issue with it sitting as a passive investment in land, in blocks of land outside the city where the city's going to eventually go to, commercial properties in town. But for us to be getting into the game of actual property development, when the market turns, property developers do go broke. We won't go broke, but we'll have to sit on that land or that development for up to 10 years for the market to turn. There's also a concern about the fact that we are a regulator and we can regulate to ourselves to benefit ourselves, which in cases that I've seen in history in Hamilton would never happen had a private developer come to do it. And some examples of that are Innovation Park, where we set Innovation Park up, we've set the zoning up there, and I think we've allowed for 100,000 square metres of office to go out there. Nearly as much office space as what the whole of the CBD's got. And we've zoned it in for ourselves, we've privileged ourselves, and we've set ourselves up with a high value asset that we would never have given to anybody else. The temptation's huge. When the council was a shareholder in the Novotel group, and the Ibis was built right on the edge of the river, right on the walkway, I don't believe that anybody else would have been given permission to build that Ibis right that close to the river, right on the walkway like that, had another developer come with that proposal.
So Councillor King, sorry, I am going to interrupt you. Can I get some clarification on that? Because what you're essentially saying is that the council granted itself a favouritism through a planning process to build that building. Who can clarify that? Because that's actually quite a serious thing that you've said there, and I think that needs clarification.
Okay, I'll withdraw the Ibis, but I certainly stand by what happened at the Innovation Park. I'm not... Innovation Park, we got the land there and we've zoned it so that it can have a huge amount of square meterage of expansion. We've now put that into our own district plan. We're the owner, we're the 100% owner. You can't argue with that one. There are no other owners. There is no partner in that one.
So Councillor King, sorry, just again, I wanted just to get clarification on what you're saying, because it is zoned, that area is zoned an innovation precinct, and I'm not sure of the full details of office and what you can do there. And Luke's not here? No. So I guess what I'm saying is I understand your tenor of your argument and what you're advocating for, but I would just ask you to only put into your debate the things you're 100% certain of, because some of the things you might say, might be misleading. So, but I understand the tenor of your debate, and that's good.
I am positive that no other developer in this town could have come to us with a block of land out by the university and got it zoned from farmland into what's happened at Innovation Park. And we are the regulator, we applied for that, and we did that for ourselves. And that is a temptation. And I also want to reiterate that the development is a high risk game, and we shouldn't be doing that without it coming back to this table. Now, if you go to page 86, we've got a submission which clearly lays this out on point 6 of that submission. Hamilton Properties groups should have the access to all Hamilton City Council and subsidiary property holdings to access opportunity and to be allowed a privileged position for future rezoning opportunities. And this is the type of thing that I'm talking about. So I urge you to, if the amendment doesn't go through, that you support this. When we get involved in development, and if we get involved in development, why wouldn't it come back to this table? And this table actually discuss it and decide on a case-by-case basis if that's where we want to be. I'm not saying that we don't have the CCO, but the CCO is restricted to passive development, passive investment only. So it's an investor, not a developer. Thank you.
Yes, I'm speaking in favour of the motion. Look, I think a CCO is about financial return, but it's also about enhancing and improving the city. And I think the Novotel Hotel was a good example of that I don't think the city would have got, and probably still wouldn't have, a 4.5-star hotel had it not been for the council through then Hamilton Properties Limited, who were the joint venture partner with TGH and with Accor Hotels. We would not have got that hotel into the city then, and maybe we still wouldn't have it now. Look, it's clear to me from that developers and landlords do not want to do business with the council, and they made that clear when I was as part of the working group on the Central City Transformation Plan, that they were keen to do joint ventures, but not with council itself. And as I moved around the various tables up at Wintec, where we had that open meeting, that was clear at most of the tables that they felt the council should be involved with some skin in the game on some investments, but they did not want to deal with elected members. And I think that still remains true if you look at some of the submissions that have been reproduced here, that they really want that political involvement to be excluded from any ventures that they might do. Look, there's been no major joint ventures that I'm aware of in Hamilton since the Novotel, and that was 18 years ago. So I think the Mayor is right. We have missed out on opportunities. And while Her Worship mentioned Invercargill, Dunedin has also been very, very successful with their property company, not just within Dunedin itself, but also in other parts of the South Island. Not only delivering the returns that we've talked about early, in the questions and in some of the debate, but also returning further profits from the joint ventures that they've entered into with other developers, leaving aside the advantage of what comes to the city as the example of the Novotel, which I've already alluded to. Add to that another example is the Momentum Trust, that quite clearly they've come to the table on the Founders Theatre, and I know this is not related to this particular debate, but clearly they want to deliver on this project and hand it over to the council, and as much as possible they want that project to have as little political interference while they go through their consultation process and the construction and delivery of the Founders ultimately back to the city. So look, I agree with the Mayor. This has been a long journey. There will still be some I's to dot and T's to cross, and some of those we've done this morning in terms of question and in amending the motion, and there may still be some issues that will arise when the CCO company is set up and we have a group of directors, but we have processes in which we can handle that through statements of intent and so forth in this company reporting back. Look back at Hamilton Properties in the 90s, and they did deliver a good return. Look at what's happened in other cities since then, even during the GFC, and you'll find over a longer period of time they have done business better than what this council has done business with the assets being owned and operated and managed by the council. Thank you.
Other speakers? Councillor Gallagher.
Try and be as concise as possible. And as is my custom, if you had a tiny part in this, IT stuff. I'm starting to like it, so that'll be, along with the river plan, one of your great achievements. I just want to... I just want to say, however,
I don't know.
I obviously, as people know, do have perhaps a view around issues of transition, and at what point do we go into a transition mode. Other people have the view that we're the full blast council right until our warrants get extinguished on the 15th of October. I'm of a view that there's a degree of caution, certainly from the close of nominations. However, I don't want that to be mistaken as procrastination. That is a point. I think the reality when weighing up the amendment is we are going to have a new mayor and a new mayoral administration, and that could be one of seven people sit in that chair. That's number one. There will be an absolute minimum of 5 elected members. So in essence, you are going to have a new government, new administration. So I do have a worry that in fact we are embarking on a significant move in our very, very last meeting. Having said that, if that amendment is not successful, then I will be supporting the substantive motion on the basis that I do acknowledge the Mayor's observation that a new Mayor and a new Council could by March actually in effect probably unpick it. But I support this because I think this as a broad principle is the way to go, and I think it's actually very unfortunate looking back, I wasn't around, that the property company was basically dispensed with, and I think the Dunedin and Invercargill examples are, we should be cognizant of that. And if we're looking for, in my view, successful small cities around the world, they do, from what I can see, have a very proactive property arm. And I think there are a range of levers which good local government needs to exercise in our local economy. And I certainly join with a namesake of mine and John Gallagher in saying that I think the Novotel and Ibis hotel developments were very positive and were a very positive economic lever for this city. And for those positive developments to happen, there had to be a degree of nimbleness, which I think a CCO in this specific case is able to exercise, which I don't think is necessarily able with just a property division. So that's my concise contribution, Your Worship. I will be supporting the amendment on procedural grounds, but if that's not successful, then I will be supporting the substantive.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment.
Can I ask a question, please? If the amendment fails, the foreshadowed... Yeah, okay, thank you.
Foreshadowed will
Goes
be
next.
put forward. So we're on the voting board and we're going to vote for the amendment, okay? Right, can you reset things? Yeah. Yeah, it does take a bit of getting used to, doesn't it? Right, we ready to vote again then? On the amendment?
Change political leanings that we council.
I'd imagine there will be a few oopsies.
The amendment was declared lost.
Okay. All right, so we're now going to look at the foreshadowed amendments. And that is it there, which is essentially the motion with an additional bit right down the very end, which relates to the policy. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Green? Okay, so councillors, do you wish to debate, speak on this, or are people comfortable that they have spoken sufficiently? Let's just vote? Okay, so we're going to vote on this one, which has got the extra H on it. Okay. You want to vote, Richard, do you?
I was trying to.
The foreshadowed amendment was declared lost.
Okay, thank you. So we're now to the motion. So we're going to vote on the motion. And our voting boards are just going to be reset. Okay, we're voting on the motion.
The motion was declared carried.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you very much for coming along, and of course, no doubt you'll be back because there's a process to go through. Right. Thank you, Calvin, very much for your work on this. All right, so councillors, there's good and bad news, of course. We are most definitely not going to get through this agenda prior to 1:30, and we do need to have a break for lunch. And because there are people who have been invited to attend family, etc., we do need to start on time at 1:30. So we're going to push on till 12:30, if that's okay with people. And I think that will give us certainly enough time to deal with the annual plan report, which we must deal with today. And we'll just see after that. It might be that we take a break a bit earlier. And then we will have that vexed issue of when to return. And that could be probably not later today. Probably, I don't think there'd be flavour for that. But it might be tomorrow or Monday. Certainly happy to return later today. We could convene at like 4:30 or something. So just percolate that, and then we'll come back to that after we've done the annual report, which is item 5, page 5. Okay, welcome along, Paul.
I might just kick off.
Yes, so the Chief Executive will present this, and of course Paul is the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, where this has gone through and been approved.
So I was about to note that it's gone through the Audit and Risk Committee, and the results in themselves have also been reported through to the Finance Committee as well, so I'm not going to go into the results. I'm just going to note the great work that the team have done in terms of preparing the annual report and delivering it. We delivered it and had it cleared by the auditors 2 weeks prior to the due date, which is a first. And the previous CFO couldn't even achieve that. So
and that was you, was it, Richard?
The previous CFO couldn't even achieve that. So I just want to acknowledge the team. But I'll hand over to Paul as the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, and ultimately the previous body that had approved this to bring forward to Council.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Paul. Welcome.
Thank you very much. There we go. Technology. So I'm pleased to be here to present the annual report. As you've heard, the Audit Risk Committee has been through this. We've had a workshop where we've had the opportunity to look at the draft early on. I've had discussions offline with the auditor, who has confirmed that in fact this report is, in terms of the work done by the team and the timeliness and the quality of the work, is the best that they have seen in the time that they've been here. So it's a great effort. And perhaps just to move things forward, could I be so bold as to ask a councillor to actually move these recommendations, that this report be received, that that Her Worship and the Chief Executive be authorised to sign the annual report, to sign a letter of representation to the auditors, that the audit opinion be received, and that the annual report and summary annual report be adopted. Could someone do that for me, please, and then we can progress?
We will do that,
formally.
yes, I'm happy to move that. So there may be some questions, if there's anything else you want to ask, and Tracy and the Chief Executive may be able to answer them, but I just have a couple of questions. Just could you please just summarise for the Council, the Audit New Zealand's sort of position, and what feedback did they give you on the audit itself and their sort of view of where things are at?
Certainly. So Audit New Zealand carry out two audits. First, to have a look at the systems and processes, and secondly, to verify the actual annual report itself. We've had good feedback on the continuous improvement that's been going on. We're all aware that there was a history in the organisation before I came on board, I guess, and there was a process had started before I got here of continuous improvement. We had Richard as the CFO, and we had an acting CFO, Paul Conda, who continued that, and now we've got Tracy as the finance manager. So we've had good feedback on the clearance of the outstanding items and the continuous improvement of controls and processes. I've seen the draft audit letter, which is a letter making recommendations following this annual audit, and it's relatively short and relatively minor in terms of the issues that are raised. So I'm comfortable that the audit process has been robust, and I'm comfortable that the underlying processes have continued to improve over the years and have got to a high standard at this point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mallett, you had some questions?
Yeah, thank you. I've got the I've got the annual report in front of me, and then I've got the figures we got presented at the second to last Finance Committee, where we approved the results for the 30th of June 2016 to go through to audit. And there are some little changes. I wonder if you could just explain what those are. So, so for those of you who have got the annual report in front of you, it's page 58 of the agenda, and it's called Statement of Comprehensive Revenue and Expense. And the total revenue figure there is 268,174,000, sorry. Yeah, that's million. Right. Yeah, $268,174,000. The figures that we had at the 30th of June, the figures that we had at the Finance Committee were a little different. They were 268,498,000. So it's about $400,000 difference. You know what does anyone know what the difference was?
Yes, it's the metered water charges to the council properties.
It's what?
It's the metered water charges to the council properties. We just had to change where we put it and where we reported it. Okay, so what did you do? So you from the Finance Committee, you reduced the revenue. Yes.
And increased expenses, did you?
Yes.
Okay, so that's because I was just going to say expenses increased. Did they increase by exactly the same amount? So that's the only changes. Okay, thank you. Okay, and the other one is, and this is one I'm just a little more concerned about. If you go to page 6 on the agenda, which is the Mayor and Chief Executive's commentary, we talk about how we've managed to reduce our debt. That council debt was expected to be budgeted to be $407 million, and there's actually $348 million, which is a $59 million reduction. So in the first paragraph, it talks about that. The second paragraph then tells us why the debt is lower. It's from higher revenue from development contributions, lower financing costs, and better than expected opening balance. Tracy, can you tell me how much each of those things reduced the debt by?
Individually?
Yeah, do you know roughly what they are? I think development levies was about 9 million.
Yeah. And the lower financing cost was about 900,000.
And the better than opening balance?
That was in the debt report.
It'll be in here.
Okay. But there's a dirty great hole in there, isn't there?
Sorry, Councillor
the major reason that debt was down is because we didn't do $21 million worth of capital projects.
Oh. So you're saying we should include those words?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
and it's disappointing that it has to be raised at this point of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I think it's the most significant reason we are under on our debt thing, and it just concerns me that we have a history of window dressing our accounts And I mean,
So Councillor Mallett, his questions.
Yeah.
And what I was going to suggest is that should be included, and the amount too, I think, the dollar amount, shouldn't it, of the deferred capital?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. With the dollar amounts of the other items as well. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so why is it then that just 4 weeks ago we had the shambles of the City News, where a blatant effort was made to try and alter perceptions about the performance of the Claudens Event Centre, and here we are in our annual report, our most kind of fundamental document that we send out to our citizens and that our elected members peruse. Is there such a, what I can only see as an absolutely obvious attempt to try and window dress what our performance is from? Our performance in terms of debt reduction has not been because of better than expected ongoing balances, lower financing costs. Primarily, it's because we didn't deliver a significant part of our capital budget.
It's not. Sorry, Worship, if I can respond. So it's not window dressing. It's an oversight, and I think it should be included.
That only because someone brought it up.
Yep.
Only because someone brought it up.
Yeah, but it hasn't gone.
Hang on, this has been reported to us every single finance committee meeting. We all knew that we were way under on our capital projects, and I've been boning on about it for the last 3 years to the point of nausea. And we still can't manage to tell the truth to our elected members and to our residents.
I've responded, Councillor.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Mallett? Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Councillor Pascoe?
Why do you think, Tracy, that wasn't included in the Mayor and Chief Executive's report?
As the Chief Executive just mentioned, it was an oversight.
A $21 million oversight.
Well, that's the answer, Gary.
Do
Councillor...
you think that someone around here, do you think that all of the people sitting around this table don't think it was a deliberate effort?
So Gary, I can say that I looked at this and, yeah, whatever, yes, good. I mean, I didn't even pick that up, and you're right, it should be in there, and it wasn't any deliberate thing on my part. I just read it all and thought, yep.
Councillor Mallett, I predominantly wrote it. I wasn't doing it to be mischievous in any way, shape or form. I wrote it, and I basically when I was writing, I was flicking through and picking up stuff from the face of the accounts, and in here you don't get deferred capital expenditure. It doesn't come through as a separate line. All that comes through is, I was going through the P&L, what's come through here, what's come through there. I was using the financial statements to pull it out, so it was just me not joining dots. So I have to take that one. So it wasn't deliberate.
Councillor Pascoe?
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. I've got a couple of questions. In recent weeks, there's been media comment and questions asked at candidates' meetings by a former city mayor about the city's financial accounts. My interpretation, and this is not what she actually said, was that the accounts are materially incorrect and the financial results do not show a true picture of the city's financial position. Do you have a comment on that, Paul?
I'm comfortable with the accuracy of the annual report, and I'm comfortable with the level of oversight that's going on into the finances. I think the processes here are robust in terms of the fact that you've got two independent members on your Audit Risk Committee and independent chair, and I really am independent. I don't have ties with anyone in this room or this building, of any nature actually. And I think your Finance Committee is robust in terms of, you've got a couple of very competent people in the finance and business side chairing and deputy chairing that. I don't always agree with everything, which is a good thing, so I think there's quite a bit of tension and review. I think we've had a change of accounting staff at the key roles, and I know it might sound like a weird thing to say, but Paul Condor, I think, was competent at his level. He was a keen Salvation Army member, and he's one of the more honest people I've met in my life. I don't think he'd be hiding anything. Tracy has come in here and has had her own fresh independent review, and she has proved to be even more competent than her two predecessors, according to the external auditor's review. So I'm confident that there's a high level of review of the finances here, and there's no material bogeys or things hiding in here or material misstatements. There's always going to be tiny errors. In fact, the auditors give us a list of tiny errors at the end of the audit. That's just the way it happens, because you have to finish at some point. You can't keep changing things. But in terms of having a materially correct set of financial statements that presents what's going on, I'm quite comfortable, and I'm also comfortable that the finances get reviewed in a robust way with people who don't agree with each other. And I think that tension's valuable.
Thank you. And one of the candidates has suggested in response to that comment that he would use mayoral powers under Section 41 of the Local Government Act to order a forensic accountant to presumably review the finances and throw a blanket over the whole organisation to either prove or disprove those comments. Do you have a comment on the process of a forensic accountant, perhaps in addition to what we already do in terms of audits and internal audits and so forth?
I've spent 11 years working for an interesting character called Michael Stiasny, where I was mostly an investigating accountant, looking at companies that had solvency issues on behalf of banks. So I'm not unfamiliar with that, and I've done a level of forensic accounting work in respect of insolvencies particularly. So I'm quite familiar with the concepts of investigating accountants and forensic accountants. To be honest, I couldn't imagine in terms of reference that would add value to this organisation, and I couldn't quite see what they'd be looking at. I think if councillors need information, there's good processes, and I've found people to be straightforward at providing information and owning up when they've made mistakes or there's been oversights, and we've just seen that. So I can't imagine what the terms of reference could be or what would be discovered, to be honest. And I always have that framework when I look at things anyway, and I'm a little cynical of everyone as a consequence of the season I've had in that type of job.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I'm not aware of the section of the Local Government Act that actually provides the mayoral powers to undertake a forensic audit.
The problem with what just a point of clarification on what Rob's just said. The problem is what you're saying is that you're shedding that shadow of doubt on every member who's standing as mayor and every ex-mayor of Hamilton, because you haven't identified who they are. And so, yeah, I know you don't have to, I'm just saying.
I think it's been widely reported.
Look, it's a matter of public record, and it was Chris Simpson who indicated that he would appoint a forensic accountant by using his mayoral powers under Section 41. But that is on public record, and I think it's been Skyped and copied on video and so forth. So, so I wasn't intending to throw any doubt on you or any of the other male candidates. So if I did, I apologise.
Right, any other questions on this? No? Okay, I'm happy to move the recommendation with the proviso that the introduction includes reference to the deferred capital expenditure and that the contributing factors include the amounts. And you can add that in B. You got that? Yeah. Okay. So can I just ask you while that's happening, Paul, what statement will you be putting out as the Chair of Audit and Risk in relation to the annual report? Has someone spoken to you in the organisation about that?
Ask for a statement, I'm quite happy to.
Yes, because it would be appropriate for you and the Chief Executive to do that.
Is that appropriate? You're supposed to be independent, aren't you?
I am independent.
No, but he's the Chair of the Audit and Risk. Well, no.
That would be like the auditor saying, or a valuer saying, how much do you want the value to be?
Well, I think, Gary, the reason I suggested
I don't think that's fair, actually.
he's the Chair of Audit and Risk.
Yeah, I'm not going to have my independence compromised by the fact I have to sit with someone to draft something.
Pardon?
You can be assured I'm not going to have my independence impacted by the fact I might sit down and draft something if I'm asked for a comment. My comments will be my comments.
Well, good on you, but I hope they are.
Well, they are. I don't have ties to anyone in this room. I really
Okay, well, you've got at least one councillor here who's very suspicious of what's going on in the finances, and I would be concerned.
So Councillor Mallard, if you hold that view, I strongly recommend that you sit down and have a session with the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, who's, who can, I guess, show you his pedigree and qualifications for the job, and you can have that discussion. And that would be the same for any councillor at any time. All of you have that opportunity to go and speak to the people who hold the information. And if you think there is anything that doesn't sound right to you, you should formally raise it. And that has always, always been the position.
Yeah, I have dealt with issues directly from councillors in the past, and I'm very happy to receive. If someone's got a concern and want it taken offline, I'm open to, in fact, I'm keen to hear. Because clearly I'm not here every day, I can't know everything that's going on. You guys know much more than I do. So if you've got concerns, then please tell me and I'll do whatever's required. I have done this in the past and I will do it again. Absolutely happy to. So specific concerns, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I've moved that, seconded by Councillor Pascoe. Contributing factors. And it's not expenditure, it's just contributing factors include the amount, the dollar amount. The dollar amount, yeah, okay. All right. I'll just make a couple of comments. I can say with certainty that the way annual reports are presented to the council and the way they go through a very rigorous process is vastly different to the way it was 6 years ago. And that is because there have been so many changes put in place to put scrutiny over the finances. And in fact, through the Finance Committee, we also put scrutiny over them in a regular way. One of the important aspects of that scrutiny is having independent people outside the building participate in that process with the requisite skills and expertise to do that, to poke around, if you like, and to ask hard questions with a lot of knowledge. And one of those people is the Chair of Audit and Risk, and the other independent member of that committee, and the external auditors who are not, the internal auditors who are not internal, they are external. And on top of that, of course, we have Audit New Zealand, who are particularly precious with us because of the V8 saga many years ago. So they know that all of us are far more focused on what they do because of that event and the sequence of things that flowed from that. So I have absolutely no concerns about the accuracy of the information. Whether we want to change the way we, do our finances or our financial plan, that will be for the future to decide. This is about reporting on the financial performance of the council for this particular year in a way that is transparent and accurate for the public, and I'm comfortable with that. In the Audit and Risk Committee, which again is open to anyone to come along, Audit New Zealand do come, and one of the additions we've made since 6 years ago is to have a private session with no staff in the Audit and Risk Committee so that we can ask any question of those auditors. And some councillors have been to the committee and participated in that who don't sit on that committee, and I would encourage councillors to do so. And I have found those exchanges very useful, and I can say that nothing is said that would give any cause for concern at all. And in fact, quite the opposite. And Tracy, the feedback we got was that under your leadership, the process has been more rigorous, more open. Staff have been far more capable of putting information in front of the auditors and going through that process. So that's a good accolade to you. As for the performance, Yeah, I think it speaks for itself. I know there, people have different views about deferred capital. I don't share Gary's views about those. They are for very good reasons that those projects were deferred. I think this council's done a really good job in the last year. I'm totally in favour of a conservative revenue line for development contributions because it is such an up and down business that it would be irresponsible, in my view, to set that revenue higher. So while it does track above the revenue set, we will always have, that good number at the end of the year. But a rainy day may come because things go in cycles. So I think, I'm comfortable with the way we do this stuff. I think it's been a great outcome. I think the council continues to perform really well, and it's not just me that says that. People who know stuff say that. The auditing people, the committee people say that. And I think that we can acknowledge the good work all of us have done to keep our eyes on that and our finger on the pulse. So thank you, Paul, for your work as well, and Tracy, it's been great. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Gallagher.
Of the Audit and Risk Committee, and I think there's a summary on one of the pages which identifies some of the key projects, and obviously just as a typo printing thing, you'll obviously, if we're going to be associated with excellent, I'll certainly want to have the list of the councillors and the senior management as you would in any annual report, right? That's just a procedural matter. And I think has been covered recently in the meters, we should never forget in reality that 6 years ago we were on serious risk of having the elected wing replaced by a commissioner by the then local government minister for very good reasons. And I just make a reflection that 6 years later, I think this report illustrates, in my view, a very, very significant positive journey. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to vote.
The motion was declared carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, David, Sean and Paul. Thank you very much. Okay, so, councillors, the question is whether you wish to dive into the next report, which would be the Founders Theatre, which I'm fairly certain will take us past 12:30, because I know some councillors have got some questions around that, and, I suspect that would take at least an hour. Or you want to finish now and we work out when we're going to come back. Finish now. Yes. Yes, that's a good point. So I understand that certainly tomorrow was off the agenda because tomorrow morning is, because it's an affordable housing discussion, I think, tomorrow morning, and a number of you will be wanting to go to that. The options are come back later this afternoon, which, as I said, would probably be about 4:30. And my sort of sense of this is we've probably got maybe 3 hours left. That's what I would think. Or we reconvene tomorrow afternoon or Monday. Those are some options, because I think, it would be helpful to dispose of it, fairly timely.
I'd
Any
like
thoughts?
to come back tonight. If we're allowed a chance to vote or speak, I'd like to come back tonight. I've got an animal ethics committee tomorrow afternoon and I'm away next week.
Right, has anyone got any problems about later this afternoon? Yeah, okay.
I think tomorrow, on Monday, I think at least Andrew and I are likely to be involved in a Waikato Times debate on Monday.
Okay, on Monday morning.
Yeah, so Monday afternoon would be fine.
Philip, did you have a commitment? minutes there that would have any matters to raise, but I could be wrong there. So item 11, page 163. So I am happy to move the adoption of all of those minutes, and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Were there any items that people particularly wanted to raise in those, or can we deal with those? No issues? Okay. We're going to vote because the voting puts it in the system, so that's why we do the electronic voting.
Councillor Tooman, you need to. The motion was declared carried unanimously.
Great. Okay. So we might go to the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting minutes, item 10, page 91, because there are some of those that I think are reasonably straightforward. So Councillor Leary, we might take them individually, or vote on them individually, and I know there's probably some questions in relation to number 3, the lake, and number 6, but there could be some others as well.
Okay, Your Worship, well, I will move the first one then, the Youth Action Plan update, so I'll move that that be received.
All right, we'll vote on that. Seconded by Councillor Forsyth. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, we'll vote on that one.
This is the first one, is it?
Yeah.
Yep.
The motion was declared carried unanimously.
Thank you. Next one.
The item 2, amendment to Class 4 gambling venue policy, that the policy be adopted by council. I'll move that.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Forsyth seconding that. Okay, we're voting on that.
The motion was declared carried. Councillor Mallett dissenting.
Okay. I think there are questions on the domain, on the lake plan, so we might want to move to 4.
Yeah, okay. Item 4, the freeholding of council endowment land policy, that that be approved. I'll move.
Okay, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Voting on that. Okay.
The motion was declared unanimously. Councillor McPherson dissenting.
Was it a mistake? What, you did vote against that? Yeah, no. He voted for it, so it was unanimous. Okay. Right, good. We need to do it again because it picks our names up. So we have to do it again because it picks the names up. All right, so voting again. It's one of the good things about the system. It just automatically picks it all up for the democracy people.
By now, Steve would have been escaping from the old system.
That's right.
Item 5, sale and disposal of council land policy, that the current policy be deleted and approve the new policy. I'll move that.
Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Voting.
Oops. Yeah, actually, those buttons are a bit odd. Need to be big squares or something.
Okay. Yep.
Did that go?
Has everyone voted?
Yes.
No. Who's not voted?
Yep, no, everyone's voted now.
Voted now, okay. See, they know what's going on.
Oh,
The motion was declared carried with Councillor.
Is that a correct vote?
dissenting.
Yep, okay. All right, I think the road naming will have some...
Yeah, number 7, growth funding policy be adopted. I'll move.
Seconder? Who's seconding the growth funding policy? The Deputy Mayor is.
Motion was declared carried unanimously.
And the Hamilton East Neighbourhood Plan Adoption Report, that the plan be adopted.
I'll second.
Seconded Councillor Pascoe. Okay, there were a couple of tweaks to that, but they was pretty clear in the documents. All right, voting.
Motion was declared carried.
Okay, did you vote for it? We got to vote again? Voting again?
The motion was
Alright,
declared
that's good.
carried unanimously.
So shall we try the Lake Domain one, Councillor O'Leary, number 3?
Yes, I'm not aware that anyone has any questions, but I'll move that.
It had a sort of a listing
it
included
did.
in the back, didn't it?
Yeah.
Second, if you go to, oh, sorry, councillor Lee.
You were on the working group, weren't you?
Yeah, I
Councillor
chair,
Gallagher?
well, I convened the working group with my colleagues, but I think the action list is on page 126.
Right.
It's not a particularly good reproduction, but I think that was the intent
That's
was
right,
to
yeah.
tighten and fine-tune the forward action list, which will then inform the LGP and also staff in terms of coming back with out of existing budgets.
Yes.
Yeah.
It will also inform any, through what will be the equivalent of the external funding subcommittee, any external funding processes. So I think that's where we're at. And we note also that it comes back, once the management plan is looked at, then that's coming back in the new year to council as well. Okay.
Because the feedback was that we wanted to see an action sort of list so we knew exactly what was happening.
Yeah.
Sharper.
Sharper.
Right.
And the only thing I would say that in terms of the document that goes out, I think I'd just say to Lance, when the document goes out, we really need to be crystal clear. Just use the Hamilton East Plan as an example. I mean, it's a document that leads us towards a reviewed management plan for the lake and the Innes Common, but also there's a whole action list that we need to be clear, and it needs to be consistent, in my view, with the other plan documents.
So are you saying then that you're expecting Sean Hickey's team, communications people, to maybe sharpen up a bit smaller document that's a bit clearer for the public?
Yeah, and that's to Lee and the team in the communication section, which Jeff is at the back there has nodded, so that's good. So we're on the way.
Okay, all right. So that's coming back in April next year. Are there any other questions on this? No? Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Leary and seconded by Councillor Gallagher. We're voting.
Motion was declared carried unanimously.
Right. So we could try the road naming.
Yep.
I have some questions which I think, Julie, thank you for coming, because I do have some questions which probably you need to...
Number 6, yeah.
Yeah.
92.
So I'm looking at page 134 on the road naming policy. Just a couple of feedback things. I wondered whether the definition of applicant should include the council, because the council can be an applicant and that was absent. So I think, Luke, we're not going to get to you. We're coming back at 4:30. Goodbye. Because, yeah, the council applicant, so I think that the applicant should be an individual, an entity, or the council, which is making an application. And you'd agree that would be, that needs to, yeah. The next item I had was, I wondered in Principle 4 if it should say the council has a role in ensuring the city's history, local identity and local culture is recognised and maintained, because it's often the whole city. Is that okay to add that in? I'm thinking people think that's okay. Yes, because a lot of the road names are actually to do with the city's history generally. Yeah. Okay. Then I had a question as to why number 9 was actually included. Why is it appropriate to have an association with other names in the area? What's the reasoning behind that?
My understanding this was raised by some of the people we sought feedback from, which was about trying to have consistency.
Right.
So if they were looking at a suburb or an area of new development, that the names should be reflective of the wider area as well as that individual.
So not a random name.
That's right. Just trying to give some feeling and consistency.
So you wouldn't put Hardacre in as a name in the middle of Poets' Corner?
Look, how disappointing. I was hoping for that, Dave. Gosh, okay. Okay, so I see what you're saying. I
Well-
think it was the should. Name submitted should have an appropriate...
Sure, it's consistent to have Mallet Drive and McPherson
Yes.
Way. That'd be very good.
Yes, it's
good
right.
street interconnections there.
I
but
actually think
can,
you're quite
I think the word
right.
could might be better than should.
Could,
I'd
could.
like the word could because
think we should
that gives
change
you a
it to
guide.
could.
It's a guide, but it's not.
Could,
yeah.
Yes, we can make that change.
Could. Yes, could. Okay. Now, I was just looking at number 10. Be single words to avoid, yes, obvious problems, but there are a lot of road names that aren't single words, so, and it makes sense they're not single words because of, they might reflect the city's history, so, and also, so I wondered, because that's a mandatory, you see, 10 says the names must, so that's a mandatory requirement.
Yes, these come directly from the guidelines that we have been provided by NZ. Yeah, NZTA. Happy to...
So what happens if someone says, good point, Sappermore Jones Place, and no one would dispute that Sappermore Jones should not be properly recognised?
happy to modify that point and say, you know, preferably or...
Yeah, why don't we change it to be preferably?
Preferably.
Yeah, okay, good. Now, it's just a thing, but I think in policies, it's not section, it's clause, so where it refers to a section, it should say clause, it's just a minor thing. Now, over on council facilities, page 137. What's that?
F in 10 shouldn't be there either. Because
Not include punctuation to hyphens. Yeah, that's a good point. Why does? Because there's often hyphens.
Yes,
Okay, so we should take that one out.
we will.
F's out. Did you have one on 10 as well, Martin?
I don't like the word must. Should gives it discretion. That's all. That's my thing. You know.
Yes,
A
instead of
should
must,
is a
it's
bit,
should,
and it's a
yeah.
guide because
Yeah,
hyphenated surnames,
yeah.
a whole lot of stuff.
So it would read,
Preferably then, doesn't it?
yeah, any proposed road name should meet the following criteria.
Yes, we can make
Yeah,
that change.
okay, good. So I'm over now on page 137, number 25, under council facilities. So initially I was not keen on council facilities being included in this policy, but it sort of seems okay now. But I did wonder whether number 25 should actually read with council will consider and determine naming of council facilities, because the first policy position is the council decides. And then the second position is, and I wondered why number 25 was actually there, council facilities will be named for the primary function of the facility. I mean, that's just so adventurous, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just so reflecting of our history, you know. Yeah, isn't it?
Yes,
You're
yes.
quite right, Philip.
Yes.
Celebrating age centre. And I qualify to go to that, so that may be where you might find me in a couple of weeks' time.
The renaming of the museum could be an interesting point.
So you see where I'm going
Yes,
here? I think it's
definitely.
kind of, I think what we're trying to do here is say it should be a celebration. So I would actually take 25 out.
We will do that.
It might be that when it comes forward to the council, that's the best name for it. Yeah.
Yes.
But,
And the
okay.
intention is for it to be council discretion, so
Yes,
that's
that's
entirely
right.
appropriate.
The only other thing I had was, and this has happened in other policies, is where we specifically name the position, General Manager Corporate, and then it's changed and it's no longer General Manager Corporate. So that's why it sort of seemed that it should be CE.
See?
Because he can delegate it, you see, or she. If there's ever a woman,
They can delegate it.
they can, yeah, quite right, Richard. Good point.
I do. I get 13 people acting chief executive quite often.
And 29, I thought that was completely unnecessary, because 28 says the council can grant naming rights for various things, and all requests have to go to the council. 29 is of no value, doesn't do anything, is it? It's kind of like repeating, really.
Happy to remove that if
So
that's
we'll
the
remove
direction.
29, right. And back to page 134, I thought under purpose and scope 2 was out because 1 and 3 are what the policy's about. It's just the same thing really as,
Yes.
you know, you agree? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So does anyone think any of those changes, does anyone have an issue with any of those changes? No? Great. All right. So we'll move, Councillor Liu, to accept the policy subject to the changes. Julie, you've got all those?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have.
Okay, great. All right, I'm happy to second. Voting.
The motion was declared carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now adjourned for lunch and, yes.
Your point about having any staff, reference to staff.
Yes.
In terms of, that should be an overriding, that should be
I do raise it all the time. I think it's quite wrong. Because in the delegations, yeah, he can just delegate down, yeah. Mm.
that should be a
Standard,
standing.
yeah.
We'll probably catch up on that point, make it standard item in 2 years' time. Take a
Yeah.
while to make it
So we're adjourned till 1:30 and then we are reconvening, for those of you who aren't here at 1:30, at 4:30 to get through the rest of it. Thank you.